All right, hello Jordan. I am taking a look now at your assignment from week 5. This is the rough draft, and I apologize for taking a while to get to these assignments, but I had a death in the family this week, so it's kind of put things behind. But anyway, so I am of course getting to it now. So let me go ahead and move my picture out of the way, and we will take a look at your assignment. All right, so. First thing I notice here is that you have provided your paper in APA, and your formatting here on the title page is great. So now this would be your primary title. What you want to do is you want to put a subtitle here, like a title that's more related to your topic, right, or to your analysis. Like you could just say analysis of such and such assignment, but make it a little bit more creative, like a subtitle, and that should be right here at the top in bold on page 2. Okay, your page numbers also should be page numbered, and you'll want to make sure that you do that according to, like when you go up into the in Word, when you have it in Word and you go up into page numbering tool, you have to look for that page numbering tool and number your pages. And you can make the page 1 not be numbered, or you can make it be numbered. That doesn't matter. I'm not picky about that, but they do need to be page numbered. Okay, and if you're not sure how to do that, you can look it up, or you can Google how to do a page numbering on Word, or you can just ask me and I can help you through it. Not hard to do at all. You just have to use the page number function though to do it right. All right, let's get into your actual paper here. So first, you've got technology industry was once seen as the future of work, offering stability, innovation, high pay, and flexible lifestyles. Tech jobs symbolize success, security, and long-term opportunity. And so I'm not going to read every word. I'm just going to kind of scan, but what you have there as a start looks good. Not seeing any major grammar issues or anything like that. And so you've got a good start there. And now right here, you say in her article, the era of happy tech workers over. You have Nolly Rawlinson as the author, so great job introducing her, and her article addresses these issues by focusing on how the tech industry has shifted away from a work-centered culture toward one driven by profits, efficiency, and corporate priorities. She examines layoffs, burnout, blah blah blah. Okay, so you don't need to talk about the genre. Like, one thing you want to be careful about is you don't want to write to the rubric. So just because the rubric has a thing here that says genre doesn't mean you should actually mention that name. You should just simply talk about the fact. In other words, I can tell by reading your paper if you're including the genre by the verbs you use. So if you say something like, especially here where you say Rawson, the thesis statement is the key for driving home what your genre is. Because remember, this is the genre of your paper now, not of the article. So your paper should be basically an analysis or an argument. So if you said something here at the bottom, something like Rawson argues that the decline of positive tech worker or something like that. If you use verbs that show, the verbs themselves can show me what you're basically saying. So the way you have it written here tells me, you say that she explains the decline. So to me, it sounds more like you're considering your genre to be informative, maybe, or informational, and that's okay too. I mean, that's it's up to you. It's how you want to do it, but it needs to be all. But you don't want to come right out and say you don't necessarily need to come right out and use the words that are used by the rubric, because then it seems like you're writing to the rubric rather than writing to the assignment, and especially to the exemplar. So hopefully you use the exemplar. So let's see how you did here for the rest of it. So getting right to the thesis statement, you say Rawson explains the decline of positive tech work culture, emphasizing, that should probably be tech work, should probably be hyphenated, by the way, there, emphasizing job insecurity and layoffs, showing how profit and efficiency can now come before employee well-being, and highlighting how pressure and burnout have replaced flexibility and support in the tech. So I don't see any indication in the introduction that you have yet considered a negative about the article. I'm sure I mentioned that in my evaluations of your assignments back in week 4, and so in week 5 you should have seen that and fixed it. But if you didn't, just fix it by the time you do your major project in week 7, right? You got to make sure you have a negative in here about the article. It can be a very minor negative. It doesn't have to be a negative that distracts from the whole paper. You can still say that the article is great, but you just have to show your honesty and fairness in your evaluation by at least picking some little negative about it to help your audience see that you are being fair and thorough. Okay? But you say here, so your thesis statement is good. Now let's see if you did a good job of following that thesis statement. So these things are all here. Now let's see your purpose. So even though tech culture was once built upon promises of stability and opportunity, Rawson shows that job insecurity and layoffs now define the industry. Okay, so and your purpose I can tell is there pretty well. And now your audience, I'm not sure. I cannot tell who your specific audience is here. So remember back in week, I think 3, maybe it was, you were supposed to come up with an audience that you were going to address your work to. And I don't remember what audience it was offhand, but I'm sure I probably made sure I told you probably that I may have needed to tell you that it needed to be specific, because I told most students that. A lot of students didn't have a specific idea. So you got to make sure you have a specific audience that you have chosen to write this to, and you need to somehow allude to them or mention them in your introduction. If not in the introduction, at least certainly right at the beginning of your first body paragraph, or maybe first couple sentences, okay? But you really need to allude to that audience, and I don't see the audience there. So I'm going to have to take a little bit off of that. So let's see. Excuse me. Historical and cultural context. So let's see if you've covered that in here. Once seen as the future of work. So you're referring about how it used to be seen, and then you talk about how it is now. So that, I think, is doing okay at touching on the historical culture. What about the cultural context? I think you're talking about people in certain careers and job industry. Once you get your audience narrowed down and know specifically who your audience is, that will help you to figure out your cultural context. Because your cultural context, let's say, for example, let's say you decide to write your paper to, well, you actually do say here the decline of positive tech work culture. So it wouldn't be bad to stick with the idea of tech culture, but you should choose a specific tech industry in order to show that you're writing to a different audience from that of Nadia Rawlinson's audience. You want to write to a different audience and a more specific audience. So maybe choose a tech culture, maybe mechanical engineering culture or something like that. So choose some kind of a tech culture that's more specific for this audience, and that will help you to get your cultural context in there too. It's not quite there. So now the core idea, I think, is covered by what you say here in your thesis statement. So that covers basically what I look for in the introduction, what we all look for in the introduction. So now we get to the body paragraphs, where it's just where you're going to show some details. So let's see how you did with this. Even though tech culture was once built on promise of stability. One of our main arguments. Okay, so there's your detail. There's your point. And then you mention that the article's title itself is functioning as a claim, and then you highlight show that that's from Rawson 2023. Now, one thing you want to add here, after the dates, when you put everything in here, and like you did here, you put the last name and the year. You also want to put it in here, and anytime, pretty much for all of your ending parentheticals, the parentheticals that come at the end of your source material, you want to add a page number in there as well. So this should be 2023, comma, and then the letter P, period, and then a number for the page number. Since you've done yours in APA, it would need to be cited that way as APA. So it should say Rawson, comma, 2023, comma, page, or P, period, 6, or whatever page it was on. Okay. Let me go on here. Again, the exemplar shows you all this stuff too, but it may not talk so much as it should about the page numbering. So that's something that should be there too. All right, so that looks good. So you basically provide your source material, then you back it up with your own information. So you are using the hamburger method. Hopefully you got that from the source, but if not, you're doing it maybe without realizing it, you're still doing it. And that's awesome. You want to make sure that you do that. So your details are there. I'm not going to read every single paragraph. I'm just going to make sure that you're doing that in each paragraph. Here you talk about and you offer details, but you don't really give anything cited in the way of evidence. So there's some evidence missing there. There's also evidence missing here. So you really only provide evidence, and it's not really the strongest evidence because it's just the title itself. So what you're missing here in these two body paragraphs, the second and third body paragraph, is the evidence that backs up the details. So I'm going to take a good bit off of that because really the one you did include isn't really a thorough quote like it ought to be from the article, but rather it's just the topic, or I mean the title itself. So I mean well, I'll go ahead and give you partial credit just because you did at least have that. So I will give you partial credit, but you should have for each detail. In other words, for each body paragraph, you should have at least one source material quote or paraphrase, but it should be cited within those. Now let's see what this one is like. Human cause. She shows the collapse of happy talk words not about jobs. Okay, so that's your conclusion. So there's something else missing up in here in one of the body paragraphs, if not its own body paragraph, and that should be the discussion of the weakness. As you may or may not, depending on if you ever looked at or listened to my evaluations of your assignments from week 4. If you didn't, you may want to go back and listen to them. But the point is, you should also have a negative in here that you discuss about the article. It should be it can be a minor negative, like I already said. I think I said already, it could be a minor negative. It doesn't have to be anything so bad that it destroys your overall feelings about the article, but it does show that you are being fair by showing at least one minor, even if it's a minor weakness, okay? And you want to make sure you do that. So that is a major requirement as well. And so your communication is, I think, good and clear, but I'm going to put that under clarity. Under clarity, I'm going to mark a little bit off of clarity simply because it has the fact that you don't have the negative in there shows a little bit of a lack of clarity because you're not providing a thorough, detailed information about why the article is not only good, but also maybe a small weakness about it as well. All right, so all that, and you still have, of course, a decent grade there. Oh, that was citations and attributions. Okay, that should have been up here. Now, your citations and attributions are, your citation here is good. You don't need to have APA there, though. References should be centered. This should all be down on its own new page. So that references should be all by itself on a page at the end. And there should be a publisher here, so it's missing some information. There should be a publisher here. And maybe a date, if not a date, a page numbering, something like that, maybe even a URL. But there should be more to this entry than what you have here. So you want to make sure you fix all those things, and make sure you fix all of that stuff. And if you fix all those things here this week, I know I'm late in the week getting back to you. Like I said, I had a funeral and that kind of made me put me behind on things. But you still have time. You still have 3 days to work on this and get it very well written and crafted so that in next week, in week 7, you can actually, if you fix everything right here in this assignment, right here in this writing, in this actual document that I could download here and look at, if you go back in there, fix everything in that document, then when it comes time to do part 1 of your week 7 assignment, you can just copy and paste this whole thing right into it and you'll be half done, right? So you get this right here, and then you can copy and paste it into part 1 of your week 7 project. Week 7 project, again, will have 2 parts. Part 1 being this one, which is addressed to the specific audience that you still need to come up with here. And then part 2 will be for a different audience. It'll be kind of the same paper, but you'll reword it to make it fit better with your different audience. Okay, so you need to choose a solid separate second audience and have that right and revise this a little bit, reword some things so that it properly fits with that second audience. And that will be part 2 of your final project. So if you're not sure about any of these things I've talked about, just be sure and let me know, and we can talk about it. I can go over with you in a actual, we can meet virtually if you want to or whatever. But just make sure that you take a look at it and listen to this video. Well, I'm going to put in here to make sure that you listen to the video, but I hope that you do. So that will do it for this video. And if you have questions, as always, or need help, please don't hesitate to let me know. And that will do it.